Let's just dive right in, okay? Today we're doing a blunt, common-sense reality check for this explainer about a trap that, honestly, almost all of us fall into. We're talking about why relying purely on hope is a massive mistake. Now look, don't get me wrong, hope is a good thing in the right context. It can get you through a really rough night, it gives people courage, it keeps a family going when things are incredibly hard. But as we're going to see, hope has some very strict limitations when it comes to actually fixing things.
Think about a leaking roof, right? Water is actively dripping right onto your living room floor. Now, you can stand there and hope it stops. You can hope really, really hard, channeling all the positive energy you can possibly muster. But hoping a leaking roof fixes itself doesn't actually stop the rain. Hope isn't a repair. It doesn't patch the hole, right?
It's the exact same story with your finances. Imagine staring at an empty wallet or logging into your bank account and seeing a big fat zero. You can absolutely hope things turn around. Hope for a sudden windfall, a lucky break. But hope is definitely not income. It's not going to magically deposit funds, and it literally never pays the electric bill when it's due.
And this illusion, it doesn't just plague our personal lives. It scales all the way up to huge societal failures. Think about a failing school system or a crumbling city. If a school is actively failing kids or local infrastructure is literally falling apart, hoping it mysteriously gets better does not equal education reform or urban renewal. Hope is not public policy.
So it really all boils down to one simple, undeniable truth. Hope is not a plan, and that is exactly where people get into serious trouble. Sure, hope might make you feel a little better for a while, kind of like a mental buffer against anxiety, but it absolutely does not replace numbers, deadlines, responsibility, and consequences.
Look at the stark contrast here between the emotional comfort of hope and the rigorous, frankly boring reality of a plan. Hope smiles, it applauds, it tells you to believe, or says, hey, this time will be different. A plan? A plan is a completely different animal. A real plan requires numbers, deadlines, and consequences. Because hope doesn't balance a budget, it doesn't repair a road, and it certainly doesn't teach a child to read. Action and planning do that.
A real plan requires a strict clipboard and checklist kind of mentality. It demands structure. It forces you to actually sit down and say, okay, here's the exact problem we're facing. Here is specifically what we're going to do about it. Here is what it's going to cost in time and resources. Here's the specific person responsible for getting it done. Here's the exact date we check the results. And crucially, here's what changes if it fails. Hope does absolutely none of that.
And, this brings us to why hope is so incredibly useful to politicians and massive institutions. Hope lets them sell the feeling of a solution without taking on the heavy burden of actually producing one. Literally anyone can stand in front of a crowd and promise a better, brighter future. But the hard part of real leadership, that's explaining the actual cost, the painful trade-offs, the strict enforcement, the timeline, and exactly how success will be measured. Honestly, most public speeches avoid those details completely.
It's incredibly dangerous to treat emotional bedtime stories as a substitute for enforcing law, order, and arithmetic. Leaders might hand out emotional candy and call it leadership, telling everyone, don't worry, you'll be helped and nobody has to give a single thing up. But a serious society, it has to separate hope from planning, because feelings simply do not replace structure.
At some point, you have to introduce the unavoidable checkpoint of reality. You can hope a program works, sure, but you still need to ask the blunt, uncomfortable question, did it actually work? You can hope a city becomes safer, but you still need order, law, and enforcement to make it a reality. You can hope the money will be enough to cover the shortfall, but you still need arithmetic. Hope becomes actively dangerous when it starts replacing the hard, measurable parts of reality.
Actually, let's turn the mirror on our own personal lives for a second. Look at how wishing for change contrasts with actually taking action. A person hopes they'll lose weight, but they keep eating the exact same way day after day. A family hopes their mounting bills will just sort of settle down, but nobody cuts the spending. A worker hopes for a better life, but never builds a new skill. Now, hope itself isn't evil, but hope without action, it just becomes a drug. It pacifies you. It lets people feel brave while they actively avoid responsibility.
Whether we're talking about your personal habits or a country's national debt, the rule is exactly the same. Reality is not moved by hope. It simply doesn't care about our softer language or our good intentions. Reality only responds to concrete things: behavior, structure, incentives, limits, and consequences.
A country can hope schools improve without discipline, or hope addiction heals without structure, but reality always demands action.
And this is exactly why a proper plan must be boring in the exact right way. A real plan has numbers. It has a firm deadline. It has a realistic cost. It has a backup in case things go wrong. And maybe most importantly, it has a specific person's name attached to the result so you can clearly tell success from failure. Hope, well, hope just has applause.
So the problem isn't having hope. Not at all. The problem is letting hope sit in the chair where planning belongs. Think of it like this. Hope is fuel. It is not the steering wheel.
A mature approach requires both, right? Keep hope as fuel. It's vital. It keeps you moving forward when things get incredibly tough and the odds seem totally stacked against you. But a plan must be your steering wheel. The plan tells you exactly where you're going, what road you're taking, what the toll's going to cost, and, critically, when you need to admit the road is wrong and turn around. So never let hope sit in the driver's seat.
A mature person hopes, but they aggressively check reality. An immature person hopes, fails, and then asks for applause anyway, just because their initial intention was beautiful. And that is simply not good enough. Having hope is perfectly fine. But if hope is literally all you have, you don't have a plan. You just have a feeling. And let me tell you, feelings make terrible architects.
So as we wrap up this explainer, ask yourself, where in your own life, or in the leaders you support, have you substituted a warm feeling for a cold, hard plan? From Common Sense in a World Losing Its Mind, 200+ short essays on reality, responsibility, and modern confusion.